would kind of walk there. And the issue they were dealing with was someone's digestive problems. And so they're constellating it. And a couple literally, like clueless, something's happening here, walk straight through the middle of the constellation. And they're like, you could have gone around, like, what? And then the couple, they find they're going the wrong direction or whatever, they came and walked right through it again. And they have a moment of going like, hey. And then the client went, I'm feeling much better. It's like something was cleaning out the digestive tract or something. No. So, I mean, it's
wow.
And then we have hawks and birds and butterflies and things, just representing things. It's fabulous.
I observed also a really cool one was one of my friends that I did, and because he was just looking for subjects in the room, and then he took like a bottle of rose water for money, and it was even like money, business, and after a while, until you look at the business, and it was like this old wooden horse, and it was really dusty, and then he said, "Oh, I need to clean that," and then he took the water, the rose water, to clean the horse under the business. That was nice. Yeah, it was
lovely.
Nice. Yeah. It's so nice, and
the layered meanings. Yeah, it's quite nice. Yeah. Quite elegant. One of my favorite. I don't know if I've told you about this one, but this is the example of when constellations can be like why we get tricked into thinking they're always really literal. It's when I did a constellation for a guy. It was a blind constellation on 3 vocations: NLP, web design, or Tai Chi teaching. And blind, I just set up the 3 to see what and the one who did not know they were Tai Chi just stood there going, I don't know why, but this movement is great. It just feels really good to do this. So, wow. Okay, we got to get back together so we can do what we do and send the travelers on their way and the rest of us travelers on our way, and yeah.
No,
So for 15 minutes or less, we'll talk about altars. For 15 minutes or so, we'll review the residency and anything we need to talk about. And then for 15 minutes or less, we'll do our final ritual. Sound good, everybody? Okay. So anyone notice anything about their altar? If you want to share, what you set the altar for, if you did anything more specific or different than resourcing yourself for the weekend, what showed up, or if you want to keep it in, there are times to notice that some things should be kept in the sacred place of your heart. So you can do that if that feels like the reverent thing to do. And let's bring the circle together a little bit.
More. Oh, she wants more.
Real circle.
Okay. Oh, a real circle.
Yeah, a real circle. Okay. Cool. I'm not doing deep and teaching it until I start doing it again. But any sharing about the altar constellations, what did you notice, both at a personal level and at a practitioner level? If there's something about that seemed interesting or a question. Now you have another tool. Or it was lame, you didn't like it. It's fine. Yeah, Dinka.
Mine turned into like a spiral. But there was one butterfly that actually I had to turn in 180 degrees in order for the spiral to go to reveal, like to become bigger and not to go down. Like I don't know if it makes sense.
Mhm.
So it's like this one butterfly that changes the direction of the spiral to go either deep, like to go, or to reveal like that.
Okay. And that means something to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
My resources, that one of the resources I can turn in opposite direction if I want to go deeper or if I want to go high.
And for me, it was in, like I said, and it was really strange because it's changing. I had one feather in there, and I really think that only that it changed. Ich meine, but it's ja normal when I stick it one thing in the floor and maybe then it falls down. So that would be an explainable change. And then I was kind of like, okay, I just get rid of the feather, not to have this movement anymore, which I want not to be surprised every time when I'm going there. And then I took a stone instead, and then still I don't like I had a sense only, okay, that's not how I left this. Yeah, that was interesting. And then I just thought of, doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't want to wonder about that anymore, because I guess I mean, I must have changed it.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, I think so.
Yeah. So that was, but it was just wondering, and yeah, like I saw it with the taking the feather out, which was the one that was like unstable. I thought that I solved the problem. Not to have to wonder when I'm coming back.
Mine started out at the beginning of the residency. I think I was trying to think creatively about different ways to resource myself, and I put in all kinds of, like, oh yeah, and this, and there's a creative new idea, and so there's all these different things, and I kept putting things back during the course, and they all lined up so it ended up, there's the feather like on the bottom, and there's these things just lined up, and a bunch of extraneous stuff went, and I realized, resourcing myself is something that I consciously do all the time. And I have a really nice way of doing that. And I know what it is and it works for me. So I realized like, oh, that's actually really nice to know. I don't have to like go try to find a bunch of new and different. I mean, it's nice to have new and different things, but there's also like an alignment that is mine, that's familiar and home to me, that I count on. So it felt really good to be like, I that's internal to me now. It feels really nice. Which isn't to say I can't enjoy other things, but it's like, oh yeah, I always have you.
Yeah, I just knew I didn't put one on my head. I think I kept kind of like bouncing back and forth between this, just let it be, feel it out, and like, oh, is this the right way to do it? Especially because I brought in negative elements too, and some significant, like one significant negative element. And then when I had that mini constellation where it was me, my personal soul, and my ancestral soul, and it was very powerful, and it was kind of like go in and add, like the suggestion that Leslie made was to go in and just, maybe rearrange the altar after that, like see how you feel. And I was like, part of that was all about like, there's a lot more resources that I'm aware of that are out there, and they're also working on the problems that I'm worrying about, but I, just work on that. Just work on what you got. Don't worry about this. We're working on it. And it was a lovely moment to
It's really nice.
rearrange. Yeah, it was a really like lovely moment to rearrange it. But then I was like, what do I do with this big negative one? Because at that point I was kind of like, I don't want it here anymore. But then it didn't feel right to be like, oh no, I can just take it out now. And eventually I just kind of shifted it around and found a place where I was like, okay, I feel comfortable leaving it there and letting it do its own thing. So, but that's where I noticed a lot of that. Am I doing it the right way or not? Should I put this in here or not? And I'm not worried about it now. I just really like the way the whole board came out. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I had an interesting experience with an altar constellation, and I promise this feeds into the one I have here. As I've said several times, I set up an altar about finding a partner. So I realized I needed to give it some attention. And I mentioned this in a recent series as a teaching moment, as I have here. I ended up in some coaching calls with those people. And one of them said, listen, I had a dream about you. Can I share it? And I'm like, oh, I hate it when this really happens. But I didn't want to be ungracious. I said, oh, sure. And she said it was about your altar constellation, about finding a partner. And that was 10 times worse. Yes. I don't want my clients to start like, that's just really, I share that in a vulnerable place. And I don't want people then trying to turn that into fixing me. It feels really weird. So it was like, okay. And she said, I just had a dream in which you were doing your altar constellation, and I imagined, just knowing who you are, that you do it with great diligence and completeness. And I just saw you sweep all of it aside so that there's room for him. And I just thought I had to tell you that. And I went, holy shit. Okay. And then we went on with our coaching call. Mm-hmm. So I went and I did that to that constellation. I just took everything out except for me and a little bit of support for me and a lot of room for him. Mm-hmm. So when I set this one up to resource myself for the weekend, it's a similar, I'm just feeling more and more called to, after doing lots, including, because that's a big part of constellations, is to see and reveal and include and give a place for things, is that now maybe a different movement of letting go, of simplifying, of editing, of having less. I connect with the earth and how it needs us to need less, is kind of the movement. So I just started out with me on some feathers that felt like kind of my lightness and resources, and one strong stone to represent something strong. And every time I went back, I said, I'm fine. I don't need to be any different from that. And I go, oh, that feels good. Okay. So that's mine. Simple. Great. And that felt really good.
Well, I just let myself, I had myself in mind, and I had my ancestors in mind, and then I just let myself put things by where it pleased me, to literally move my hand and aesthetically. And then I just talked with Leslie at our last break. I actually had changed it a fair amount this morning. And when I talked with her, I actually had it backwards. I had the grandchildren and the future generations all the way at the back. So I tried with the picture.
Oh, and I didn't know we were talking about your altar constellation, by the way.
Yeah. No. I didn't tell you. So I tried with the lock screen so I could look at the picture and turn the camera. Turn the picture. And that wasn't it. So I just went back and I got my kids in the right order and the grandkids, and I got my daughter-in-law next to my son instead of underneath him.
Although that's not completely right.
I had
or double entendre.
I had the future generations got more little things, and I had trauma, and I had wounded me, and the wounded me had already gotten on top of my heart. So those two were reunified, or that which I recognize that which got left behind. But it just got in order with me and Peter, and the kids and the wife and the grandkids and the other son, and trauma just got to be right here across from me, and because it's a resource, and that just
Yeah.
was so nice to have it as a resource. And I had a glass piece in front of it before to block it from me, and I don't need that. So
Wow.
very, and there's still, and the rest is like I wanted to be surrounded, so there are other stones, I don't know what they are, but I wanted the circle to be to have a complete line. So yeah, it's been an amazing weekend. Thank you.
And that feels a little full circle. Just, I'm really glad you said explicitly that in the end, trauma. We keep on talking about trauma. Becomes our resource.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for making that clear.
Yeah.
Mine was set blind. I don't know what anything really is. And so but what's been cool about it, it has been supportive to me. It's been like, I think it's kind of like the sand tray thing, right? Like I just kind of go and I'll just be with it for a little bit and then move what needs to move. And so it's just been this little tweaks here and there. That's it.
So I think it's a good idea if you want to take a picture of it. But otherwise, right now, would you, with reverence and respect, dismantle it and put them in the correct bags and whatnot here? And you just say thank you to the stones and rocks and pieces of glass and feathers to return to their original function. And obviously, the constellation doesn't end when you put away the altar, right? And just do it really respectfully, and everything will return to its original duties until it serves something new. Oh, that means I gotta do it too. It doesn't have to be perfect by any means, but
What did I say on that?
yeah. I actually my soda.
This was so addicted to those.
I am a little bit. I tried about 2 months ago to kick my soda thing. I also do usually caffeine free too, just so I don't have too much caffeine in my system. I lasted about 2 days. I said, screw it. This is too hard.
I probably haven't had it in 15 years. But where I realized I was addicted, I went to New Zealand and they don't have any version of them. Like other countries, you can get like your Coke Zero or, they have no version. I was like,
You have no cola?
They do now.
well, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
This is like 18 years ago when I realized that I really and I was just like clawing at vending machines looking for.
Well, and it's interesting.
This is a problem.
It's completely psychological. I go camping for 4 or 5 days. I don't need it. I drink water for 5 days. I'm just fine.
Mm.
So it's just totally psychological. Yeah.
I feel sometimes when I feel nauseous. I feel better when I do.
Carbonation can be good for settling the stomach. Yeah. Okay. I hope that was in service to you, but you also have a new tool. You can use this for yourself, for your clients, if you're doing a little New Year's gathering. If you've got tchotchkes that you can say, people are going to get together for a few hours, say, set your intention at the beginning of the workshop. Okay. Let's review. I really like to do this because, of course, you don't remember what happened that far long, but it's really helps with the learning. If we just take a second. Thursday, does anyone have any memory of Thursday. Yeah. Oh,
That's right.
I came late.
I was right.
And I have to watch the morning.
Yeah.
You talked about trauma.
Trauma and attachment that morning. Yeah. Yeah. And then somebody had a constellation.
You facilitated, Judy?
Oh, I
Judith.
facilitated,
Yeah, it
yeah.
was me.
And-
There you
yeah.
go.
For Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we must have done something else in the afternoon. Maybe a little bit more trauma. No, we did
No,
the Grace's
Oh, my.
Mhm.
the
Oh,
scarf mini
the
thing with
scarf
the
thing, yeah.
right. We did that. We learned that format, the soul retrieval format.
I love
And we also had the 30-minute. Who did the 30-minute?
That was on
that
Saturday.
was-
Okay.
Oh,
Our first one was on Saturday, I think. Yeah.
Oh,
No, but that was hers.
but it wasn't Thursday.
Oh,
No, maybe it was Thursday.
No, it was. We started
You
them
were
on
Friday.
Friday.
Okay.
And you did it Friday
I did
because
Friday.
then Judith incorporated it into hers Friday afternoon.
yeah.
Mhm.
So you did do my constellation.
And then on Friday, we changed our topic because we wanted to make sure we did what before Grace left? Everyone remember what we did on Friday?
Management.
Oh, right.
And,
No, we did that on Saturday. So
Oh.
you would.
So I didn't miss
So the
it.
thing that you didn't
Oh,
miss:
Healing
Okay.
sentence.
healing sentences
Oh, yeah.
and
Representative.
representatives.
Mhm.
Yep. Representative management. I thought you were talking about, you said client management. I'm sorry, that was on Saturday. Sorry. Yeah. So that was the topic then. And then we did 2 constellations that afternoon, who were,
Serena.
and
Right.
And then on Saturday, this is yesterday, our topic was,
Trauma.
again,
Trauma,
yesterday was client management and group dynamics. Really thinking about that and how to help groups work well. And then who had constellations yesterday?
I facilitated for Dinka.
You facilitated.
And I facilitated for Grace.
There you go. Excellent. And then,
And you did your 30-minute?
oh, right.
And I did my 30 minutes of the Satchel of Life.
Right. So on Friday, we had the souls. We had the ancestral soul, personal soul, and the self. By the way, these exercises rocked.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those of you on the 3rd residency, gonna have to come up to their level. I mean, it's exactly what I was hoping you'd learn how to do and could use, because figuring out how to take this wonderful tool but put it into lots of different formats is just, and they were great. So that was awesome. And then the next day was yours, the satchel with the things we want to give back versus the things that we want to keep. Yeah.
But we must have done more than one on Friday and Saturday, right?
Oh, no, we also did.
Who did the line one?
I did that for Grace on Thursday.
Okay.
It's the soul
This
retrieval
one.
format.
Oh, that was the one that you had.
Right.
That
Or
I
she
had
had
always-
Because only 3 of us
Right.
said that.
We had been
Right,
talking
okay.
about trauma,
Mhm.
and I said, I have a format,
Okay.
and I'm not going to be able to do it for all of you, but I'm going to do it for someone.
Yeah.
And Grace raised her hand right now.
Okay.
And then it got incorporated into yours.
Right.
Right. And by the way, I just want to say about that format, you may all be thinking I'd like to have the experience of that format. I don't think that's something you can do on Zoom, because I think having the embodiment of people moving and there and with each other is really pretty important. I'm not sure it's going to be able to work super, like, because you have someone there as the support to the trauma, and someone is the, and
Yeah,
if
you
you're not
won't
actually in
feel
the
it.
room, it'll be tricky. So just to say that if you're thinking about trying that. Okay, so that was Saturday. And then today, our topic
Perpetration,
was...
war, and victimhood.
Yes. Mostly because, and now that we're moving into the third residency, I'm going to do more around topical stuff as opposed to sort of management and format stuff. This is now like the nuts and bolts of doing constellations. These are constellation topics, things you're going to run into, right? So immigration, not immigration. We didn't get to immigration today. But we'll get to that next time. But perpetrators and victims and war. And so, and then we had the 30-minute over here. Right room that was awesome. Yeah. And then we just did a constellation over here. And now we're doing this. Okay. So just take a moment and be with all of that. Any lingering questions or wonderings, not in the format of getting me off on a new teaching, but in the sense of something that just seems important to name or say or bring up now before we leave.
I was just wondering when you were saying that, and did you hold up my constellation for the end because of the theme of today that something could show up? Because it was, in a way, that was really, it worked so well. It was just,
All right, we self-selected.
That's the field. That's the genius of the field at work. No.
I mean, just thinking of possibilities. So that would be the highest possibility.
No, if I had thought it through, half the people, I mean, she's got a big World War II piece, right, from your family.
Yeah, grandfather.
Anyway,
and over here, and you've got war stuff, a different kind of war thing. So it's, no, I was not thinking in those terms. It's just the way the field's plans.
Yeah.
I have a question. On the first residency, actually, when you first talked about the primary and secondary emotions, and we had this little exercise about two of us, and one is choosing a theme or a person that they have problem with, and then another one stepping from one place to another, showing the primary and secondary emotions. But are these our emotions towards the problem of this person?
Yes.
Okay. That was the other person for sure.
That's the idea. I mean, you could do the other thing, but the way I set it up was your primary and secondary emotions about that situation.
That wasn't the projection.
That's a different. That's a different format.
What would be the other?
Well, you could say I'm in a conflict with someone. What's their primary and secondary emotions?
Okay.
I'm not quite sure why you would do that, but one could. One could. But it's really about me, right? I want to know when I'm in my secondary emotions about my job search, and when I'm in my secondary emotions about my job search or whatever it is that's going on in my life. And it just kind of really makes it clear. It's just a nice little format mostly for just learning it. Although here's something that I did once that you can do is to set it up with, because I've talked about rapport with self. So your secondary emotions about yourself and your primary emotions about yourself. It was really beautiful. It was really moving for me because I was having a lot of self-judgment at the time and I wasn't really being nice to myself. And so that sort of all came through in the secondary, and then the primary, it was just lovely. It was a really nice, so it's a nice thing. It was for me a nice thing to do. I'm not saying it would be for you. But relationship with self is always an interesting, right? As you saw with, was it Kelly's when Anna came in and was the loss? Oh, it was Dinka's when Anna came in as the aspect of Dinka to come back. So the coming back relationship of self with self. Yeah, very powerful stuff.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are there any guidelines about how recent or how sort of activated a trauma is before you work with it in constellations?
That's a really good question. That's a super good question. You can feel when something's too raw and new and not a great idea. Having said that, you've now seen, and I'll try and do more and more. You can also do, there's the format you guys have been practicing, which is, what's the problem? Let's constellate and find the entanglement, blah, 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 right? But there's also more ritual type of things that you can do.
Mhm.
And there are rituals embedded in all of your constellations as well, right, as movements. So I could imagine, and I told you the thing about the Bill Mantle doing that thing with the teenagers, with the girl who had had the abortion. Now, they didn't do a constellation like we just did for Anna. It wasn't like that, but it's having ritual constellation movements to honor what she's gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine, I mean, whatever sort of native indigenous rituals you have to address the trauma, but in our culture, we have an impoverishment of this sort of thing. We just do. So, I can imagine, circling people, someone with resources or love or, but really, probably under those circumstances, you want to keep it very ritual and pretty, in a sense, controlled.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want shit flying up from the field.
Right.
Because that's trauma energy can be very intense, right? Connected to that, but not exactly the same, is grieving. So if someone's had a really recent loss, this doesn't need to be fixed.
Yeah.
Grieving is a perfectly proper unfolding. So if someone comes to you with a recent loss, then again, you can do ritual things around that. That would be really, sort of like a corollary to funerals. Those kinds of movements. But I wouldn't do anything to make it better because we want to support the work of grieving. Now, if someone's 6 months, a year down the road, and they're now in what's called complicated grieving, they're caught in it, they're stuck in it, then there can often be a constellation movement to help whatever's got it stuck. But it is important for us to think in terms of, if someone's had something really hard happen, then what they need is support and love and accompaniment in grieving what's hard has happened. That doesn't need to be fixed. And sometimes people do, because there's so few resources, they come to have it, like, I'm coming to get it healed or fixed. And I'm like, I can offer something to help and be of assistance, but I don't want to fix that. Because what you're feeling is a perfectly healthy set of unfolding feelings. And what I want to do is support the continuing unfolding of that. So knowing the difference between those things. And if a trauma is particularly intense and wild, and it's not your bailiwick to deal with recently intensely traumatized persons, then don't. Refer them to your local grief counselor, your local, sexual abuse expert, or whatever the thing might be. Yeah. It's a really good question. Yeah. It's when something's stuck.
Yeah.
And then otherwise you have the ritual sort of container, and that can be really lovely. Yeah. Okay. So before we do our final ritual, I just want to say, don't prove me wrong, but I'm about to say, but this has been the most pleasurable teaching experience for me. Mostly because you guys are being really caring with each other and really responsible for yourselves and your feelings. You're having your own feelings. They're as complicated as feelings are. You're maybe even occasionally getting cranky with each other or whatever, but you're having an observer of those and sort of not always completely buying your more intense states, in a sense, so that you can stay enough resourceful so I haven't had to manage you guys harming each other mostly, or being troublesome to each other or whatever. So I just want to say you guys are mwah. Mwah. Can I clone you for the next class? Yeah. It's just really sweet. And I know that you guys are feeling good about each other too, like you're really glad for each other. But I just want to name that it's been a pleasure to be your teacher and to keep, I didn't want to leave it for the last day of the last residency to go on the record about that. Now don't prove me wrong. There's still 2 months to go. Yeah. Everyone ready for the last ritual before we send each other into the night?
Wow. Yeah.
Judith's going like, no.
I'm just so thankful. I just think this is an amazing group.
Obviously,
More
easier.
time to
Wait
wait.
for
Can we just like keep our regular lives, but create a communal
Here,
living
take
arrangement anyway?
Yeah, we'll create a Constellations commune.
Yeah.
We got the next one?
Yeah. Oh, I need a pen.
Okay, so this is a little bit, again, my go-to. It's a format I seem to like. So what I want you to do on the card, when you take a moment before you write on the card, so bring this to your heart and then write it on the card, is I want you to think of a specific natural place, a mountain, a lake, a tree, a river, a beach, that has been really good for you in your life. It can be recent, it can be long ago, it can be what got you through your childhood, but a natural place, you know, the elm tree in my neighbor's backyard that I used to climb into, or, you know, Yosemite Valley. But just
It
think,
cannot be a pool, no?
it can be what?
A pool, a swimming pool.
Natural. Let's do a natural place. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, that's a different format. I want us to connect with the earth with this. And we'll honor that pool. That must have been very important to you. Yeah. And then write it on the card when you feel like you've got it. And we got Serena right at the end. Yeah. Is it a place that something bad has happened to? It's just
It was like my
precious.
friend. It was my.
Good.
Yeah.
It still is then. If it's still out there?
It's not.
See, that's my fear about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was a tree that fell down.
It fell down. It wasn't chopped down.
No, it wasn't chopped. It fell down.
Let's keep it
It's
in.
okay.
Because, I mean, places that are precious do get developed or, you know, whatever. And so I don't want to, like, re-trigger people back into whatever. I want something that feels good and
Well,
yummy to you.
It was like, oh my God, that was my friend when I was
Yeah,
a kid.
good. Excellent. Okay, so let's push back our chairs. Little room.
Are we standing?
Yes, we're going to be in a circle. We're going to do the circle thing. Oh, and let's just go around and everyone say their thing and a word or two about what makes it important to you. You know, the time in your life and what makes it important. Just a word or two because we're getting to the end here.
Mine was a hot spring on the Colorado River that my family visited on a rafting trip. And it was very, the cold and the hot and the family togetherness.
Excellent.
Mine is Mount Arunachala in Tamil Nadu, India, where I've made a pilgrimage every year for New Year's.
Oh, wow.
And I feel the presence of this mountain. It is so powerful. Every day there's a picture of it on my altar.
Nice.
And mine is a little forest where we always were building our little fairy houses. And when I was thinking about it, I just actually realized now it's a natural cemetery.
Oh,
Wow. Can you say the name?
It's Blaue Bankwäldchen. Also that's what we said as children.
Mine is a river that I don't know the name of, near Hayfork. It is in Trinity County, next to Shasta Trinity Mountain. And yes, it was the first time I experienced freedom swimming naked in the river.
Mine is my giant cedar tree that was in our yard, and it had like big, like thick limbs, like that came out like this, like an arm that would hold you. And my sister and I would just play in there and hang out, and we'd like dig the dirt and make cookies with the. Anyway, we'd play a lot. That was our place.
Awesome. Mine is Ocean Beach in San Francisco, where my family went a lot, family outings, and where was when I was going through my hardest time in my 30s, where I would go every day, and the feeling of being washed and cleansed. And, it's so beautiful. It's at the edge of San Francisco.
And mine is a place called Grace's Cove. Yes, Grace's Cove. On a place called Block Island, Rhode Island, where my family had property for many, many years. We finally sold it about 5 years ago. Slay to me. But that was the cove above where our house was. And I just grew up, looking for crabs and looking under rocks and just being curious. And it's where we put the ashes of both my parents. So let's make this a little bit more of a circle, just to the degree so that we can be a little, once we go around, we can be moving in a circle. Yeah. And so step onto yours and just step into that experience of being that thing. And then we'll turn and experience everybody's. You might open your eyes and just notice the other parts of the world that are also here. Elements of the planet. There are mountains and rivers and beaches and woods and trees. Just a step off back. And then we'll go this way. Legs got hot. Your goals. Notice the other element. Then take a step back. And move to the next one. Step back. And the next one. And notice the others. And then step back. And go to the next one. Just the others. And then step back. Next. The others, and then go back to the one that you started with, so you can end with the one that's your particular friend. We just went on a trip around the world. And may you find the blessings of place wherever you go, because the blessings of place are wherever you go. Yeah. Safe travels, everyone. See you all soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
See 4 of you on Tuesday night, hopefully.
Oh yeah. So I can